Hello and welcome back to another tier list video on Kingdom Hearts. Last time I gave my opinions on the Kingdom Hearts 2 bosses, or most of them. Since then I have finished the game. I have beaten every boss, even the ones I hadn't beaten before, and I could thus not rank. But I don't know, maybe I'll make another tier list video for that later, if there is ever any desire for there to be one. For today, though, we're going to be doing the Kingdom Hearts 1 Worlds, because I'm currently playing through Kingdom Hearts 1 again, and I felt like making a tier list about the Worlds, especially because I feel like I don't necessarily have the same opinions as most other people. But we'll get back to that when we get to that. For now, let's start with the start. The tutorial world, where it all begins, where the entire adventure begins. Back in, from the top of my head, 2002, I believe the game was released. I was too little to be playing it back then. It didn't take me much longer, though. I was playing this when I was really little. Really young. And I started playing this, and I remember my mom would have to read everything out, because I couldn't read. Or at least not very well. I'm not native to English, so reading all of that was just a bit ahead of me. But I remember being in the living room, and my mom would have to be there whenever I would play, and this is what we would be doing. I'd be playing Kingdom Hearts. And yeah, this is where it all began. So nostalgia, these would all be very high tier for me, which is why I'm going to try to keep nostalgia out of it. Otherwise, we'll never see any low rankings, and I'm not sure if there will be any. There probably will be. I'm trying not to think about it until I get to each one of them. I will also, unlike last video, try to do more explaining on why my opinion on that certain rank is that way, rather than just throwing it in there and being like, yeah, I think it's pretty good. I'm going to try to give more opinions, because that's what would make this video interesting. So, Destiny Islands, I think it is very repetitive, very tedious. It's very good to play for the first few times you play the game, but when you get to a point like where I am, where I've played the game at least 10 different times, I have a few hundred hours into the game. Destiny Islands for me is just the place that you have to get through to get to the rest of the game. However, normally that would make it like a D or an F. I don't think Destiny Islands is bad, especially because it gives you some fun challenges, like trying to beat Riku, which is a lot easier when you take it easy. Just take your time. It becomes a lot easier, but most of the time, it's a tutorial. You're trying to rush, trying to go quick, and I do enjoy that challenge it brings. So I'm going to bring it up to C, which is around in the middle, which seems like a fair place to put it. It's not a world that's one of the ones you're going to be talking about after the game ends, because of how awesome it was. But it's also certainly not necessarily a bad world. It's a very long tutorial. I guess that's my main complaint. It takes a long time before you can go into the rest of the game. So I'll keep it at C. And then the next world will be Traverse Town, which, in my opinion, is better than Traverse Town. I'll do another tier list soon about Kingdom Hearts 2 worlds, but I feel like Traverse Town has always been better to me than Twilight Town, and that might be because of my nostalgia. It might be because I grew up with Kingdom Hearts 1. I also played Kingdom Hearts 2 a lot when I grew up, but I kind of don't remember too much from Twilight Town for some reason. Even though you spent more time there than in Traverse Town, I remember Traverse Town so much better. Probably because that was the age where I didn't understand where to go. So I'd spend hours on each world just walking around, not understanding where to go. Especially in that opening scene where you have to find Donald and Goofy and it's really unclear where you have to go next. I would go every wrong way before going the right way once. So I spend a lot of time here. But we're not comparing it to Twilight Town right now. We're comparing Traverse Town to the rest of Kingdom Hearts 1. In which case, I would say it's a B rank. It's a solid world. It's a nice hub. It's a nice homey feel. You meet a lot of the important characters that were going to be by your side for the rest of the franchise, like Leon or Squall, Yuffie. These characters come back every game. Sid is a big one as well. They continuously come back. You meet the Moogles with synthesizing for the first time in the franchise because it's the first game. You get to pardon me. You get to synthesize at the Moogle store, and I like it. I thought the synthesis was done quite well in this game. It's not the most effort. They did make it a lot more effort in 1.5 in the final mix when you had to get the stones, because some of those stones are just so tedious. Like I think it's called the Black Blade, which is the one in Deep Jungle. That one's most certainly is good at annoying me, because sometimes it just moves so fast you can't actually keep your eye on it, and I don't know if there's any trick around that. So that's kind of annoying to me. To farm the I cannot remember the name, but the mushroom with the dancing, where you have to hit it as many times as possible until the stop spell starts working. That one is also, to me, one of those that's just, it's so much work because you have to basically make your different equipment setup just so you can get that to work. So the synthesis on that front has gotten a lot more annoying in Kingdom Hearts 1.5 Final Mix. But still, I think it's a very good hub world to have the synthesis in. And it has a boss, which is one of the most nostalgic and classic bosses to me, the guard armor. I do really love how it looks, especially the original version. Final Mix version, not as much. Looks a bit like a clown outfit. But I do very much think it's a solid world. So let's move on to the next one, which is Winnie the Pooh. 100 Acre Woods, which I am going to put in the F tier, and I know that's probably overrated, an overrated, like, overdone statement. Oh, Winnie the Pooh, 100 Acre Woods, these levels are bad. Everyone says that, I feel like. And it definitely deserves more respect than that, because it is somewhat fun. And I say somewhat because that's all it is. To me, just going there and being forced to do minigames and being forced to do them well just to get the rewards I want. Obviously, that's every time you have to do minigames for 100% completion, right? It's the same with the Frozen Slider. You have to do it well, you have to learn it. It's annoying. It's just that this entire world is nothing other than that. I do feel Kingdom Hearts 1 does Winnie the Pooh best, so I might actually move it up to D tier just for that. But it, to me, has never been an important world in the franchise. We don't need a minigame hub. Just throw a minigame in a world every now and then. Basically the same way Kingdom Hearts 3 did with the Frozen Slider. That's fine. Make a different minigame in a different world instead of making a hub where you just go there to just be stuck in minigames for a while without actually having any combat. It's a combat oriented game. I play for the combat. I play for the fighting. Story is important to it as well, but the Winnie the Pooh story hasn't exactly been the most thrilling and exciting either. So I'm gonna move it up to D tier just because it's the best iteration of the 100 Acre Woods level in these games, in my opinion. But it definitely is not a good world, in my opinion. It could just as well have been left out or fully reworked, and it probably would have been better that way. Maybe not taken out. It should have been reworked. Let's keep it at that. Wonderland. Wonderland is an interesting world because it didn't come back. There's a few of these throughout the franchise, worlds that showed up and didn't make it back into a different game, except for, games that just copy the other games. Of course, it came back in Chain of Memories, and then in Rechain of Memories. And I haven't played Coded fully, but I believe it's in Coded as well, and by extension, Recoded. I can't remember. I think it's also in 365 over 2. Is that the name? I probably said that wrong. But it never got a new installment of Wonderland. It's always just going back to the same Wonderland. Whereas other places, like Agrabah and Halloween Town, kind of get revised, kind of get, changed a bit so you can see a different part of the story. The same happened with Pirates of the Caribbean, which made for one of my favorite worlds in the entire franchise when it got revised in Kingdom Hearts 3. And I'm extremely excited at Kingdom Hearts 4 teasing there will be more worlds like Pirates of the Caribbean and Kingdom Hearts 3. And all of that is just really good. But they never did anything like that for Wonderland. Why is that? Well, it can be because of legal issues, which was, I believe, the case with Deep Jungle. It can also be because of the world just not being that good, or them not having any ideas for it. And I would like to say that they definitely didn't run out of ideas. There is a lot to come up with for Wonderland. There's a lot more in the source material that they could have used. And there's a lot more that they could have used from Creative Energy, because it's one of the most creative franchises they could have worked with. They just didn't do it amazingly. I like the Bazaar Room. I like the idea of having different walls and like, you can walk on the walls, you can walk on the roof, and everything's different perspective, and you can make things 3D, make things flat. I like that. But it's pretty much the entire world. It's just that room. Because everything around it is just a way to get back into a different version of that room. And it's basically just a maze, but it's just one room. And to me, that doesn't do amazingly. It doesn't quite hit right. So I'm going to put it in the C tier. Because it is a fun world. I do wish it would be revised or upgraded or whatever. I do wish it got a sequel into one of the sequel games. But at the same time, I don't think they did great at this version of the world. They didn't do bad, just not great. And then we get to Olympus Coliseum. Olympus Coliseum. It comes back maybe the most. It's one of the only worlds confirmed for Kingdom Hearts 4 as well. Or at least to some extent. We've heard Hades, and we've seen Donald and Goofy walk around the underworld. So we know there's going to be at least cutscenes or story happening in the underworld. So we can assume there might be a world for it as well. Other than that, it comes back in all three of the main titles. And it comes back in several of the side titles too. I wouldn't say every one of them, but it might be. I can't think of specific ones I've played that don't have it, but then again, I haven't gotten too deep into the sequels at this point in time. So, is it worth it? Did this first iteration of the Olympus Coliseum deserve being turned into the great symbol of Kingdom Hearts it is now? And I would say, absolutely. I'm going to put it in S tier. Just because to me, it is the most, not the most, it's one of the most fun. It is the most fun minigame type thing in the game. And by minigame, I mean just a tournament. Just going in there, whacking some guys, moving on to the next. To me, I love it. It is absolutely an arena done right. And a part of that, obviously, is probably nostalgia talking. But to me, this is what I want to see coming back into Kingdom Hearts 4. It's not going to happen. We're not going to get the Colosseum to be the main attraction next time. But that's how I would want it to be. That's what I hoped from Kingdom Hearts 3 to do. That's what I hoped for Kingdom Hearts 2 to do. Kingdom Hearts 2 did have the Underdome, which to me wasn't as good. Especially because for the Paradox Cups, you had to go to a completely different part of the level. I prefer just having everything in one place. And this did it really well. It's literally just a hub for minigames. Comparison to Winnie the Pooh here. It's just a hub for these contest minigames. but they're actually enjoyable. There's several challenges like Sephiroth, there is the Ice Titan, and to me, from what I remember, each and every single one of them was fun. Doing all of the cups was very enjoyable. Doing them all alone was very enjoyable. Doing them on a time limit was enjoyable. I enjoyed them. And I also think the Sephiroth fight is absolutely amazing. It is such a good fight. It is the only time when I was younger, actually cared enough to learn patterns in a boss fight rather than just go in and start slapping things. Because the boss fight was interesting to me. It was interesting to see the patterns and how to do them because everything felt just out of reach. It felt possible, like you were almost there. And all you had to do was just learn a little more, and then you'd be good enough. And I tried to fight again, maybe 10 years or so later, and I still had everything done in my muscle memory. I still beat the fight first try when I came back, and I'm sure that's because it's easier than in some of the other games. I don't find it too difficult in Kingdom Hearts 2 either, personally. But whether or not the boss is actually difficult or just gets easier as you get older, the fact that he is memorable enough that I still have the muscle memory for it says that it's a great final boss to this world. And with that, everything in that world, to me, is fun. So that's why it's an S tier. I really can't say anything bad about Olympus Coliseum in Kingdom Hearts 1. Other than maybe that it's very small. But again, it really is just a hub world. And that brings us into Kingdom Hearts 1 Deep Jungle. The second game in this, I suppose, Destiny Islands as well. This is the only one that didn't get a revise in one of the later games. Actually, this one did get revised, Destiny Islands. I'm pretty sure that was in Birth by Sleep. So, yeah, Deep Jungle never got remade. I believe it was due to legal issues. As of this year, 2024, it is legal domain, so perhaps it will come back into Kingdom Hearts 4. I don't see it happening, though. Maybe in a prequel game. Could have a nice story about the parents of Tarzan, which is what the books for a large part are about. But it never came back. And I honestly don't think it will either, even if there is good chances for it. Just because people don't seem to like it. And this is where my rankings will probably start to vary quite a lot from what other people do. Because other people tend to put Deep Jungle fairly low, maybe in the middle. I'm going to put it in A tier. To me, it is not an S tier, but it is close. Because I did thoroughly enjoy the whole world. I enjoyed the minigame, the slider. I find that quite enjoyable. The only annoying part is that you have to keep coming back up just to do it again. And you can't just go through it in one sitting. You have to just go through it, go back up, go through it with the new level, and then go back up, and then go through it with the new level after that, and then go back up. That's quite tedious. Other than that, I enjoy the minigame. I enjoy the boss fight. I think seeing Clayton ride an invisible steed was pretty cool as a kid. And as an adult, I found it hilarious seeing him just glitchily float about. I remember there being an issue with his health bar. I didn't actually have that issue when I replayed it a few days ago. And even back then, I don't think it was the biggest issue. So I'm going to put it in A tier. Good boss. Good enemies. A lot of people have issues with the vines, for example. I don't see why. In my experience, they've always been really easy to maneuver, but also really not that important. There isn't that much that you need to do through the vines. There's a few collectibles, like a few little things you have to go through, but it really is no issue. Just get on the vine, click on the next as soon as it appears, and you're on the other side of the hole before you know it. This world really did not have that much bad platforming in my experience. Both as a kid and as an adult, I did not have issues with this world. Agrabah and the Cave of Wonders. is one that I'm going to put in B tier. Because for me, this is an average world. This is in the middle of the game, both in unlocking the world and also in terms of how good the world is. I very much enjoy the secret boss. Kurt Siza is awesome. The story behind Kurt Siza is really cool. If you don't know the story, from what I remember, and this could just be like a urban legend or something, but from what I remember, there was someone either through Make-A-Wish or something similar to that. They got to, maybe it was a contest. They got to name a boss or design a boss or something amongst those lines, and I believe it was a kid named Kurt. So the boss was named Kurt Siza after him because I believe he passed away. Again, this might be an urban legend, but well, it's a legend nonetheless. So either if it doesn't exist or I just told it wrong, I find a very interesting story for a boss. I also find the boss itself quite interesting, making you switch between combat with your Keyblade and with your magic, alternating between the two in different phases of the boss. I remember vividly the first time I beat Kurt Siza as a kid, and that's a good thing. If you remember vividly when you first beat a boss, then you know it's a memorable boss. I have a few bosses like that in Kingdom Hearts 1. I think most of them are beyond this point in the story, so I'll get back to them maybe. But that's Kurt Siza. Cave of Wonders, I don't think the Genie fight was too memorable. It wasn't too bad either. The second Genie fight, the first one's the Jafar fight, the second one is the Genie fight. That one isn't the best, mostly just because Iago kind of just floats off and you can't hit him for a while. That one isn't great, but again, also not the worst. Got some vivid memories for that one, most of them less pleasant. And in general, I do like the idea of the city being one main street with some shoot-offs, some small sub-alleyways. And I think they didn't do it great, but it is a very good concept for a bigger level. And I just wish they brought that back in a later level. Like when they started making bigger levels in the later games, I wish they brought back Agrabah in that same way. Because I really enjoyed that layout of having a big, just one straight line from the entrance of town all the way to the palace with small side alleyways of the side. And I believe that is what they should have done in Kingdom Hearts 2, and they didn't, and I find it a mischance. But yeah, other than that, it is a pretty, just a general world. And there's also the Pot Crab. I've been mentioning a lot of bosses. I didn't mention the Pot Crab or the Trickmaster for that matter, but I'm going to start mentioning bosses from now on. Trickmaster is just a general boss to me as well, pretty cool. Pot Centipede, I don't know, it's always been satisfying to me. Unlike when you break different parts of a boss during the fight. And if you do the Pot Centipede quite well, you can break almost every pot before you get to the final bit of his health. So he's just like a tiny little centipede. I like it. Satisfying boss. And we get to Monstro. Monstro is a very interesting boss. A very interesting world, sorry. I did him today, literally today, and I think I did the entire world in a matter of maybe an hour, probably more like half an hour, 45 minutes or so. Because I still remember the layout of the level. Because it was such a horrible experience getting lost in there so many times in those ugly walls where everything looks the same, and some of those rooms look identical to each other, and it's the worst. But it is nice that you can get through there pretty quickly if you know the way. I also do find the boss interesting. I also like that they made the second version of the boss just have like environmental problems, which is one of the only times in Kingdom Hearts 1 where that happens. It's just a very quick world though. There isn't really that much going on. It's literally just the same thing. You have his mouth and then everything beyond that looks the same. It's just a big maze with some search ghosts, some large bodies, some musical floaty boys, and some some keg spiders, and that's it. So I'm gonna put it in C for not being a great world because they could have done a lot more with it. And here comes the next very controversial pick, uh, Atlantica. People would put this in F without a doubt. They wouldn't even discuss why. They'd just say, "Oh, everyone knows that goes in F." I'm gonna put it in B tier. Why? Well, coming back to the bosses, let's start there. I think the big Ursula fight isn't great, but the smaller Ursula, the normal size Ursula fight, I do very much enjoy that fight. I think it's very creatively well made. You have to hit the pot instead of her, and by doing that, the cauldron, you can start hitting her. She has some ads as well, which is interesting. Most bosses in the game don't have their own unique ads. Most bosses in most of the Kingdom Hearts games don't have their own ads, their own unique ones, and she does. And all of it is, to me, just not that bad of a fight. I quite enjoy that fight, other than the fact that when she spins, she just keeps going for a really long time sometimes. And they can't do anything when she's doing that. You just have to kind of stay out of her way and hope you can get the cauldron to work so you can stop her by force. There's also the mini boss of the shark, which is, I don't know, not that interesting. You can just hit him and brute force him really, really quickly. Then we get to the main thing that people would consider an issue in Atlantica, and it's the level, the layout, the platforming. People hate the maneuvering, the movability in Atlantica, and personally, I've never had an issue with it. This is one of those worlds I did today, start to finish, and there wasn't a single time I had issues with the movability. Every time it was just really clear. How do you go up? How do you go down? It's all just clear. And again, that could just be muscle memory. Maybe it is. I do also understand complaining about the dolphin's kick or mermaid's kick or whatever it's called ability, because sometimes that kicks in when you're just trying to go up or down, and that's quite annoying. But I really don't have any big issues with it. If it was perfect, I would have put the world in A because it's a really cool concept to me to be able to just swim around and the whole jumping is no longer a thing kind of thing. But because I didn't do it perfectly, I'm going to put it in B. I do like the rest of the world. There is the big jellyfish things, and you can only kill them with magic, otherwise they split into smaller ones. And I never realized that as a kid, so I always just had to deal with the small ones. But I do like the idea that there's a special way to defeat them where you get their loot instead of just having to fight more. I like the large body version, like the Atlantica large body version, the big round fish. I like him, that he's being carried around by the screwdrivers. I find that a funny little silly thing. I very much enjoy Atlantica, and I come back and I actually find it delightful. I find the music fun. I find the combat usually pretty good. I find the creativity nice. I find the boss fights decent. All in all, it's a decent world, in my opinion. Which brings us to Halloween Town, which is gonna go into A tier. I would put this in S tier. However, I'm gonna try to not clog S tier with being the biggest rank out of all, and I have at least one more that's gonna go into S tier. So I'm going to put some stuff in A tier as well. I love Halloween Town. I think they did it much better than in Kingdom Hearts 2, for one. I like the reskin for Sora. I think it is very on brand. I think it's very fun. I love this movie. I used to watch this movie every year around Christmas. I did so for at least 10 years in a row. I didn't do it last year just because I didn't think about it. But it is a huge part of my life, that movie. And getting to see it in Kingdom Hearts is also just such a great thing to me. I always loved it. The music, again, music is great. The bosses, I don't understand why Oogie Boogie turns into a house. I mean, I get the concept of why it happens. It's just such a weird thing. Like, hey, you finished fighting a boss, now have fun fighting a house. Good luck. I don't dislike the boss. Again, it's a unique concept. They really kind of dropped the unique concept bosses in the later games a bit, I feel like. This one wasn't the best unique concept, but it was a fun one. It passes for me. The Oogie Boogie fight before that is a great fight, in my opinion. It's very good at being very annoying, but it's also good at being very fun, in my opinion. The song that plays during that fight is still, to me, always the Oogie Boogie song, because every time I hear that, I think back to how many hours I spent locked in a room with Oogie Boogie, trying to so hard to beat him as a kid. And I, for some reason, didn't mind that I found it so hard. Jack would keep getting sniped by traps, and then there would be a saw blade flying through the sky, and I would finally get led up to fight Oogie Boogie, and I'd do 2 hits, and then he'd throw me back down. And for some reason, I kept going, and I kept enjoying it. And maybe it's just a theme. Maybe I just love Halloween. Maybe that's it. Who knows? Either way, I'm putting in an A tier. And we get to Neverland, which is just a ship and a clock tower. And the clock tower is completely useless other than the secret boss, the Phantom, which I thought was mandatory as a kid. And I never beat him until at some point I found out he wasn't mandatory and I skipped him. I think there needs to be more secret bosses like this, just Heartless floating around the world, and you get to choose whether or not you want to take out the Heartless. It is your job as the Keyblade wielder. I love it. I think it's a cool concept. I think that needs to be brought back more often in the later games. But other than that, this world is not the best. It's also not bad. I very much enjoy this world. So it's not going to be in those lower tiers, but it's also not going to be in those higher tiers. So it's going to be just right here. These are not necessarily in the order I would place them, but it is just a B tier for me because it is just a ship. We don't actually go to Neverland. They call the world Neverland, I'm pretty sure, but you don't actually go to Neverland for even a damn second. You're just on the ship. You get to meet Riku again. I think there's some pretty fun voice lines from Sora as well in that world. There's the Shadow Sora fights, which are pretty cool. Reminds me a lot of the thing it's obviously referencing, which is Ocarina of Time. Is it Ocarina of Time? I think it is. Shadow Temple, Ocarina of Time? I could be wrong. I don't know, I enjoy the Shadow Sora fights. The Captain Hook fight isn't the greatest because you can kind of just juggle him up in the air and he doesn't do much. But I don't know, it's a classic fight to me. I love pirates as well. I'm called Captain Thomas for a reason. To me, this has always been a great world, but just not that. It just doesn't live up to where it could have been. It could have been so much more. But they wanted to keep the world short, and I guess they ran out of ideas. They ran out of plans when they just finished the ship and saw that the world was already as long as the other worlds. And that brings us to Hollow Bastion, which is, without a doubt, my second S tier. Every game that comes out from Kingdom Hearts, I wish we go back to Hollow Bastion. No, I don't mean Radiant Garden. No, I mean Hollow Bastion. I wish we get, even if it isn't actually Hollow Bastion, I wish we get a level like this. With such grand expectations as you enter and see a giant castle in front of you. And you do actually go through almost all of that castle. Well, probably not almost all of it, but it feels like it. You go through such an immense amount of areas in that level. You spend hours there. First in the under area with the waterfalls and the puzzles and the maze. I think there's one part of the maze you can't go to. It forever haunts me because I feel like you can go there, but I've never figured out how to, and I can never find guides on it. It's a world filled with mystery and exploration and fun. There's the gravity puzzles, like where Chesty casts gravity and comes down. I don't know. Small little detail. I think it's fun. Uh, there's a lot of bosses there. The Behemoth, which I guess is technically the final boss of that world. Behemoth is one of my favorite Heartless. I wish it came back in more games as a reoccurring enemy rather than a one-off. I love the Behemoths. I love the Riku fight. It is pretty difficult from what I remember, but it's a really good fight. There's some really classic quotes there, like Kyrie is inside of me. Hell yes, he is, lad. I'm probably butchered trying to reference that, but it's such a classic world. There is so much going on. There is so much to do. There's puzzles to open new rooms. There's puzzles to unlock chests. There's different types as well. There's not just the gravity. There's also the library where you just have to spin. It's not even a puzzle, but it feels like a puzzle. It is such a good world. It is, without a doubt, my favorite world in Kingdom Hearts 1. And yes, even beating the world of which I said there is nothing bad I can say. Hollow Bastion beats it, because the good things are even better than they are in Olympus Coliseum. Not much more to say. I guess I can mention the secret boss, Semnis. Only beat him once, because I only realized he exists once. It's a good fight. I haven't played it right after playing Kingdom Hearts 2 before, so that's going to be interesting. I'm curious if I can remember patterns and if they're actually the same and stuff like that. But I don't know. I find it interesting. I'm gonna enjoy that very much. And that brings us to the final world of the video, the world that never was. Is that what it's called? No, it's the end, the final world. I don't remember what this one's called. Well, whatever. It's this one. I don't find it a great world. But I am going to put it in B tier. Just because the aesthetic's really good. And I like the end part of the world. Those first few rooms, I like the world where you're just going towards the Dark Star. That room is pretty cool. There isn't much happening, but that invisible maze, I don't care about the invisible maze, but the mirroring on the floor, I always very much enjoyed that. A nice aesthetic. The room after that, the really big one, which takes up the majority of this world, is just not that good to me. It's just a really big world, a big open room with barely anything in it. And that could work as like a big wasteland, just a big empty area. But that isn't what it is. They filled it with a ton of decoration and clutter. So it's just a huge platforming level, kind of like the mouth in Pinocchio, in Monstro. But there isn't actually anything inside. In the mouth for Monstro it works. Because it's Monstro's mouth. What do you expect to be there? A city? Come on, of course there isn't going to be much. But this is... Well, there's also not going to be much here, but they put more than the mouth. Because the mouth's just a bunch of planks, and then a broken ship. And here they put so much just colors on the wall, and weird little mini rooms where you have to fight stuff, and there's a lot going on. And at the same time, nothing at all. And I guess that's kind of symbolic for what the world is, because it's nothing, but also everything. But to me, that world just isn't doing the end of the game justice with that big room. And then you go to the hub, like where you go through all the other worlds again, which is a cool mechanic of going through them all. But that's it. It's cool. It's not necessarily super fun. It's not necessarily necessary. I don't understand the point. It's the world's end. How are we seeing worlds that haven't ended in the world's end? Why are they all there? And why is there no other worlds? It just doesn't quite make logic, make sense. To me, at least. And I'm sure there's a good lore behind it because no one else complains about it, but to me, that doesn't do great. It's what comes after, for me, that makes this world be a B rank. That final, like, well, you get the, what's it called, Chernobog? The fight with him. It's basically the Ursula fight, but much better, from what I remember. Like, less annoying. Plus, it's a cool little cameo to an old school Disney thing. And then we get that final room, which is like a big gauntlet, which has always been a, I don't know, a cool room to me with the glowing floor. And then we have it at the end, Ansem. Or, well, not really Ansem, but we call him Ansem just for simplicity. To me, that ending is great. The final boss is great. It's just the start of the world, like the little bit with the, basically just those hubs and the big room. To me, that could have been slightly different to make it maybe more interesting, or it could have been the big room could have been a few smaller rooms. Because when you count the actual rooms with combat in this entire world, there isn't many. I believe the world start with the mirror floor, the water reflections. I believe that only has fights on the first time going through it, from what I remember. Could be wrong. Then the second room, the big room, that does have combat. Then you have all those little small rooms which have combat, but to me, I don't know. I don't consider going to Traverse Town. I consider that Traverse Town. Yes, it happens inside of the World's End, but I'm not going to give World's End credit for Traverse Town being good. It's got to earn its credit by being a good world by itself. So there is no combat there. Then you have Chernobog, boss fight room. So you have one combat room, one boss fight room. And then you have one more fight room with normal combat. And then you have one more boss fight room. So there's 2 combat rooms and 2 boss fight rooms. And that's the entire level. They really could have made something like a Dark Star be a bit bigger than 4 rooms. 4 rooms that actually matter. So that's my main complaint with that. Other than that, it is a cool world. The aesthetic's cool. The soundtrack's good. And yeah, it's going to just land in the middle of the game pretty much somewhere. And with that, we have our complete tier list. I'm sure some of you will have big disagreement with some of the things I just said. So if anyone actually wants the full 43 minutes of me rambling about my childhood and these worlds, leave a comment. Whether you agree, disagree, questions about the game, questions about my opinions, feel free. And I'll see you guys in the next tier list, which will probably be either Kingdom Hearts 2 Worlds or Keyblades from one of the games. Maybe Kingdom Hearts 1 bosses. They'll happen at some point. Have a nice day. See you later.